The night of December 20th, 1972, a cell of 3 B-52s is inbound to Hanoi, holding formation 4 miles in trail, flying the same heading they flew the night before and the night before that. Below the overcast, the sky is already lit up. The SA-2 missiles are climbing through the cloud deck like telephone poles stood on end and set on fire, and the crews can see each one the instant it breaks the cloud. The cell holds its course. It does not weave. It does not break. It flies straight and level, because that is the plan, and the plan was written in an office more than 6,000 miles away. By the time that night is over, 6 of those bombers will be gone. It is the heaviest loss of the entire campaign, and for a few hours, it looks like it might end the whole thing. This is the story of the most powerful bomber in the world, sent against the most heavily defended patch of sky on Earth. For 3 nights, the thing that nearly broke it was not the enemy. It was the routing. Same heading, same altitude, same timing, night after night, handed down from Strategic Air Command Headquarters in Omaha, Nebraska. The men who flew into it did everything right. The plan they were handed did everything wrong. Let me lay out the case. Start with the airplane, because you have to understand what a B-52D actually was to understand how close this came. This was not a fast jet. It was a bomber the size of an office building, 8 engines slung under a wing that flexed as it flew, a crew of 6 inside, and a range of nearly 8,800 miles. Top speed sat somewhere near 638 miles per hour, which sounds quick until you remember it had to fly in a straight predictable line to put its bombs on target. And the bombs are the part people forget. The D model had been through a modification program with a name that fit it perfectly. They called it Big Belly. It let a single B-52 carry up to 60,000 pounds of bombs, 108 of them packed inside and hung under the wings. 1 airplane, 30 tons of ordnance. Now put a fleet of them over 1 city. Because that is what Linebacker II was. Roughly 207 B-52s were available for the operation, split between 2 bases. About 54 sat at Utapao in Thailand, close enough for a shorter run. About 153 sat at Andersen on Guam, a long haul across the Pacific just to reach the target. The force itself was split by Model 55 of the older D models and 98 of the newer G models, and that split is going to matter, so hold on to it. The mission was simple to state and brutal to fly. Break Hanoi's will. Hit the rail yards, the storage, the airfields, the military targets ringing the city. And Hanoi, by December of 1972, was not an easy target. It was one of the most heavily defended cities that had ever existed, wrapped in a belt of Soviet-built SA-2 surface-to-air missiles. The SA-2 was the telephone pole, a missile as long as a small truck, climbing on a column of flame, guided by a radar the crews called Fansong. Over the 11 nights, North Vietnam would fire roughly 1,240 of them. Some sources put the number a little lower, and it is worth being honest that these figures are argued over to this day, but the shape of it is not in doubt. They fired missiles by the hundreds. So here is the setup. 30-ton bombers, the best in the world, against a wall of missiles. The question the whole video turns on is not whether the B-52 could do the job. It was whether it would survive the way it was being sent in. Night 1, December 18th. 129 sorties went against Hanoi. 3 B-52s were shot down. 3 out of 129 sounds survivable. Almost cheap for a first night over the most defended city on Earth. And that is exactly how it was read at the time. Night 2, December 19th. 93 sorties. 0 losses. Not a single bomber down. If you were sitting in Omaha reading the message traffic, Night 2 told you the plan was working. The missiles were flying, the bombers were coming home, and the tactics that got them there looked vindicated. They were not. And this is where you have to look closely at what those tactics actually were, because the reason Night 2 came home clean had almost nothing to do with the plan being good. Every cell was flying the same way. 3 bombers, 4 miles in trail, stacked at the same altitudes, crossing the target on the same headings within the same narrow windows of time, night after night. The routes barely changed. And then, after the bombs came off, every bomber executed the same maneuver. A hard turn away from the target. They called it the post-target turn. That turn was not designed for Hanoi. It was a holdover from the airplane's real job, the job it was built for, dropping a nuclear weapon and turning hard to escape the blast of its own bomb. Carried into a conventional war over a dense missile belt, that same turn did two things, and both of them were close to fatal. First, the electronic jamming. The B-52 carried powerful jammers meant to blind the Fansong radars, and the strongest of that jamming pointed out the tail. When a bomber rolled into the post-target turn, it swung those tail antennas away from the very radars it was trying to blind. For a few seconds, in the turn, the jamming that was keeping the crew alive was pointing at empty sky. Second, the wind. High over Hanoi that December ran a jet stream wind more than 120 knots strong. Flown one way, it was a tailwind that pushed the bombers through the target fast, but the post-target turn swung them straight into it. That tailwind became a headwind. The bombers slowed, their ground speed falling away, and now they were hanging over the target longer, wallowing, lit up and slow, right at the moment their jamming was pointed the wrong way. How much speed they lost is argued about. Some accounts say around 100 knots. Others put the loss closer to 250 knots at the worst of it. Either way, the effect is the same. The turn took the most dangerous seconds of the whole mission and made them longer. And the missile crews on the ground figured it out. They stopped firing blind through the jamming. They waited. They learned the pattern, the same heading, the same window, the same turn, and they practiced firing exactly when the bombers rolled into that turn and slowed and went naked. 5 of the first 9 B-52s lost were hit in the turn. That is not the enemy being brilliant. That is the enemy being handed a schedule. The crews knew. This is the part of the case that matters most, because it kills the idea that nobody could have seen it coming. They saw it coming. At one of the briefings, a B-52 crewman stood up and asked, out loud, who was planning such stupid tactics, and why. The flying was starting to feel like ducks in a shooting gallery. The same route, the same altitude, the same trail formation, over and over. And the answer that came back said everything. The planning was being done at Omaha's Strategic Air Command headquarters. The routes were kept the same for ease of planning. Ease of planning. On the other end of that ease was a young crew holding a straight line into a wall of missiles. So we come back to where we started. Night 3, December 20th into the 21st. Around 99 sorties went out, flying the same plan for the third night running. 6 B-52s were shot down. Some counts push it to 7 when you include one that went down over Laos. The losses came in clusters. 2 G models and 1 D model lost in the first wave, and then, hours later, an identical set lost in the third wave, as if the enemy had simply run the same drill twice and gotten the same result. 4 of the 6 went down near Hanoi. 2 limped out of North Vietnam before they fell. And notice which model kept dying. The G models. The newer airplane, but the one carrying the older, weaker jamming gear, the one less able to blind the Fansong. 15 bombers lost across the campaign sounds survivable, but 6 in a single night, most of them the same vulnerable model flown the same predictable way, is the number that nearly ended it. Do the arithmetic that the planners were suddenly forced to do. Lose 6 a night for a handful of nights, and there is no force left to send. The loss rate for the whole campaign would end up under 2%. For a few hours on night 3, the rate on that night alone was terrifying, and everyone in the chain of command could see the curve. That is the low point of the case. Now the turn, the real one, the one that saved it. After night 3, the plan finally changed. From night 4 on, the routing that had been frozen for 3 nights came apart in the best way. Planners varied the routes, they varied the altitudes. They compressed the timing between cells and spread the cells apart in height, so a single missile salvo could not rake through a stack of bombers flying the same line. Withdrawal routes were swung toward the Gulf of Tonkin, so bombers could run for open water instead of wallowing back over the guns. And the post-target turn, the maneuver that had been silhouetting bomber after bomber, was cut back. The losses fell almost at once. Night 4 cost 2D models. After that, the curve bent down toward nothing. The same airplane, the same crews, the same missiles coming up, but flown like the enemy, was actually thinking instead of flown for ease of planning, and suddenly the bombers were coming home. Two things fell together to finish it. The first was the tactics. The second was the missiles, or rather the running out of them. North Vietnam had fired at a furious rate early, something like 250s A2s in the first week alone. That pace could not hold. By the large strike on December 26th, the defenders managed only around 68 missiles against a wave that came in far heavier than anything before it. That December 26th strike was a maximum effort, roughly 120 sorties, with about 78 bombers launched out of Anderson in one continuous stream. For all that mass, it cost a single B-52. 1. Against the 6 of Night 3, that is the whole story of the campaign in two numbers. The final nights barely registered. The raids on December 28th and 29th drew few missiles and suffered no B-52 losses at all. The wall had been high, and now the wall was nearly out of bricks. Count the full cost honestly, because the case demands it. The Air Force acknowledges 15 B-52s shot down. Some say 16. North Vietnam claimed 34. Another handful went down in Laos or Thailand, which pushes the total airframe loss to somewhere around 20 when you count the badly damaged jets that never flew again. Add the other aircraft lost across all types: the F-111s, the F-4s, the A-7s, the A-6s, the EB-66, the rescue helicopter, the reconnaissance jets, and the all-in figure runs to roughly 26 or 27 aircraft. Against that, 729 sorties flown out of 741 dispatched, dropping about 15,000 tons of bombs, close to 3/4 of the entire campaign's tonnage, carried by that one airplane. Then the talking started. On December 22nd, in the middle of it, Washington asked Hanoi to come back to the table. On December 26th, the night the missiles ran thin, Hanoi signaled it would. The strikes north of the 20th parallel were halted at the end of the month. Talks resumed January 9th. The Paris Peace Accords were signed January 27, 1973. So here is the verdict, laid out, and here is where I hand it to you. The B-52 arrived a war winner, and it left one. It carried the tonnage, it took the punishment, and it was over the target when the other side finally said enough. Blame does not land on the airframe, and it does not land on the 6-man crews who held their heading straight into the missiles, because that was the order. It lands on the routing, on the frozen headings and the nuclear-era turn carried into a place it was never meant to go. For 3 nights, the bomber and its crews were bled by their own side's plan before Omaha would change it. But the case does not close, and you already know where you come down on it, so say it. Was Night 3 avoidable, a self-inflicted disaster that a route change on Night 1 would have prevented? Or was it the unavoidable price of a nuclear war doctrine, walking into the densest missile belt on Earth for the first time? A lesson that could only be paid for in bombers. Was it really the post-target turn, or would any predictable pattern have been picked apart the same way? And the biggest one, did the bombing force Hanoi to the table? Or was Hanoi coming back anyway once its SA-2s ran dry, and the terms on offer were the same ones sitting on the table back in October? You have refought this one before. The bomber is the defendant. The routing is the crime scene. The numbers are the evidence. The verdict is yours.